All right, so look, I'm back with somebody that I'm excited to interview, and it's so crazy because I know most people are going to see this headline and go, "Oh my gosh, she went over there with him," and I'm excited and honored because we all love and feel like we're a fabric of the Black Lives Matter movement. It has become something that I think has brought this generation to a place where we're now able to hold people accountable in a real way, in a viral way, but also show up and demonstrate the pain of generations of people of color that have gone through what we're going through now. And this woman started the movement, one of the two women, right, that started the movement that we all embody and are part of and own. And so Patrisse Cullors. Do I have to say Patrisse Marie Cullors?
You do not, just Patrisse Cullors.
Okay, fine. Patrisse Cullors. Okay, because y'all be having like 4 names. Especially shout out to my Spanish friends. Y'all be having 3, 4, 5 names. I'm like, can we just do abbreviations? All right, no, I do want to say before we even get started, because people are going to say, oh, he's either going to attack her or be biased. I'm somewhat biased, but I have a job to do.
Yeah.
People need to give you your flowers for selflessly starting a movement that has become a worldwide, global movement that has impacted and brought just light to situations that we would have never, ever seen.
That's right.
And so I want to give you your flowers before we start because I think, we live in a world where hashtag protect Black women is a thing online to make people feel like they're doing something. But when it comes to Black women who are under attack, we're fast to move with mainstream and just adopt this life sentence or the death sentence. And so before we get into all the details of, what's going on, I just want to give you your flowers because I take a lot of pride and being a part of the BLM movement. But I'm also very angry with you, as you know. We've talked privately,
Yes,
and I'm going to get into
have.
that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
So you're at home one day and you say, Black Lives Matter. Because I'm intrigued by the fact that, how did you even come up with the idea? We knew Black Lives Matter, but nobody said it out loud or created a movement that was so simplistic yet impactful.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was actually in Salinas Valley, which I don't know if you're familiar with Salinas.
Wait, up north?
Yes.
Of course I know
exactly.
Salinas.
Which is also a prison town. I was visiting one of my mentees who had just caught a robbery case. And it was the same weekend that we were all waiting for the acquittal of George Zimmerman. Or we were waiting for what was gonna happen, I didn't think he was gonna get acquitted. Like, we all knew he killed a young boy.
Trayvon Martin.
Yes, Trayvon Martin. So I was sitting up in the prison and, I was meeting with Rich and at the time his wife and his best friend, Haywan, and we were all sitting and talking and processing in the visiting room. And I remember Rich kind of being like, nothing's gonna happen. And I was like, no, let's be more hopeful. Like, something's gonna happen. Get back home that night, get on social media, and then start to see like, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. And I just remember, I still get emotional thinking about it. Like, I remember crying and just being like, is this really what we're doing in 2013? Like, this is the outcome. And I went on social media, I went on Facebook. That's when we were all using it. I don't know when the last time I went to Facebook, but.
Because Instagram was a thing, but it wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing, exactly. And I remember going to Alicia Garza's page, because that's my girl. And I was like, what's Alicia saying? Like, and she was popping off, and she was like, because a lot of people were saying, why are we surprised? Why are we even upset? This is what they do to us. And she was like, no, I'm always gonna be surprised when they do this to us. I'm always gonna be upset.
Meaning people were complacent with the fact that this was actually happening, where a man hunted a young boy down in his community who just went to the store and murdered him and is getting away with it.
Yes, so many people on social media were like tripping, that people were tripping. It was a lot of Black people, And Alicia, said, she wrote this love note and she said Black Lives Matter. And then the minute I saw it, I put a hashtag on it. And I was like, we got to put let's make this thing go viral. That's literally what I said to her. And from there, we spent really the next year, and Opal Tometi, also there's 3 of us. She goes by Ayo Tometi now. The 3 of us spent the next year trying to figure out, like, how do we use this thing? How do we get people to not be afraid of saying Black and Black Lives Matter, and really started to have conversations. It was a conversation piece at first, and it was like an online strategy, and then slowly it would build into what is now a global movement.
Well, what was your background at the time? Like, what was your day-to-day
I was taking
life?
on the sheriff's department in Los Angeles.
So you were already an activist?
Yes, I was about 10 years in at that point. So I had successfully won a bunch of campaigns in Los Angeles. I was a local organizer. I had just started the Dignity and Power Now, which was my very first nonprofit organization. And I was taking on the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. My brother was actually brutally beaten by the sheriffs inside the jails. He almost died when I was 16 years old, and it changed my life. It changed everything. And I got an opportunity to hold them accountable. And so I started doing that work 1 year before starting Black Lives Matter.
So when you were an organizer, were you a community organizer? Were you working for a union, a foundation?
I was a community, you know that because you were a union organizer. Exactly.
Yeah.
Only people who've been inside that space would know to ask those questions.
Yeah.
I was a grassroots organizer.
Okay.
So I was in the streets every single day. I was at the jails every single day.
Grassroots means you don't have a large fund.
Yes.
You don't have no big backing by a
Yes.
family fund or anything like that. You're grassroots. You are literally from the mud.
That's right.
Organizing.
And I was meeting with, foundations and other organizations, basically being like, what's the appetite to fund work that takes on the police? And at that point, nobody wanted to do that. They're like, no, we don't want to touch this.
But let's talk about why, because I don't think people understand the community construct of policing. Like there's unions, right? I worked for a union. There was no way you were going to come into Kaiser Permanente and do anything to a worker who was doing anything they wanted to do, even if they weren't supposed to.
That's right.
Because you had to weigh whether or not you're going to fight this machine that has millions of dollars, that has a loyalty pledge to their membership.
That's exactly right.
And has a perception to maintain of we don't lose for our members.
That's exactly right.
So going up against the police, you're going up against a machine that is very well organized and very well funded.
Yes, and I was 28 when I started Dignity and Power Now and started going after the sheriff's department. I knew that the police were. I knew that they were well funded. I don't think I understood how big the machine was.
Oh yeah.
And how far-reaching
How
until much
organized
later.
the communication is,
Yes.
how the press works. They
Yes.
have the infrastructure to destroy anybody
Literally.
or hide anything.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I don't think I fully understood that. It wasn't until I would say, BLM started to really take on police violence, and we started to uncover the role of the unions and the lobbies and then, obviously everything that's happening now where I'm like, oh, they will go after and destroy. That's what they do.
All right, so when you all are planning this and the hashtag, are you still promoting it, or is it now you're just planning it? Because at that point, Black Lives Matter as a hashtag had gone viral.
Exactly.
But
It went viral multiple times.
But was there like a movement attached to it, or did it just become a movement of the people?
No, it was not a movement attached to it yet. It was a lot of direct actions. There was a lot of people using it. There's some like famous signs of us on Rodeo Drive, because the Los Angeles team is the first chapter of the Black Lives Matter Global Network, which would eventually become that. But our first protest was on Rodeo Drive. We were like, we don't need a protest in Crenshaw. We know that Crenshaw knows what's going on. Let's take this to Rodeo Drive. We have these big Black Lives Matter signs, and it became a really iconic moment on the steps of Rodeo Drive.
I live in LA. No, I said, but I thought it was smart because we were rioting in our community,
Exactly.
burning down our businesses, doing all this shit that they expected us to do, and
That's
being
right.
angry and continuing to create this culture of disbelief that you can bring justice, or like that pain just stays centralized
That's
to our
exactly
communities.
right.
When y'all came to Rodeo, and I remember driving through Beverly Hills, I said, oh, this nigga's white people are going to go crazy, because now you got their attention.
That's right.
So that was specifically intentional.
That was so intentional. We did not want to bait the cops in our neighborhoods. We knew how that would go.
Because by protesting, you bring them to you.
That's exactly right. So, I remember when we organized, it was Melina Abdullah, and it was her students, Cal State LA students, that organized that protest. And we built the route and everything. And I remember the cops calling me the night before. Because, we're putting everything on Facebook at this point. Like, I'm putting a Facebook invite. Like, I'm not no security culture.
Yeah.
There's no signal. There's nothing other than like blasting what you're doing. And the cops called me the night before, and I was like, how'd they find my number? And I was like, oh, I think I put it on the flyer. And they're like, ma'am, we hear you're holding a protest tomorrow, and da-da-da-da-da. And that this is, like you said, pre any resources, pre like it being global, and we were just doing it from our heart. And I remember talking to the police saying, yes, we are. And they're like, you know, we'll be bringing our, you know, motorcades and things like that, because we don't get permits when we do protests. So they, you know, brought their motorcade and we went in and out, and that protest for me changed everything. Because if you're from LA, you know that, and probably from California too, because New Yorkers, y'all can get millions of people out for a protest. Like, people will hit the streets. In LA, you know, hundreds maybe. But we got 3,000 people. It was the largest protest at that point I had ever helped facilitate. And it was meaningful because I felt the energy of the people of Los Angeles, and I would argue the country, wanting to do more. And there was a younger generation, you know, we're used to, you know, I call him OG, and he always laughs about it, Reverend Al Sharpton, and we were used to Jesse Jackson, and we were used to all the old heads, you know, kind of like staging our response.
And they had the visibility of the civil rights era. They had the press machine.
That's
they
exactly
had
right.
the infrastructure to turn that out. This became something very different.
This was organic. It was truly organic, and it was a time. It was a time to be alive and to feel this, like, oh, we are all doing this together, and we are all going to challenge, which for so many of us, you know, who grew up Black and poor, like I did, like, the police were our primary enemy. Like, going outside, we knew all the police on the block, and they knew our names.
That's fun. You know, back in Stockton, I always think about this guy named Superman. That was a cop, because he would literally jump out his car and take off and catch you in the street. You're like, damn, it's Superman. But we did know our police.
Yes, and not in a good way. Like, it wasn't like, you know, the police shows where the cop shows up and brings the kid back and is playing baseball. Like, these people beat us up. These people harassed us. And so to have a movement start building where we could finally hold them accountable, it was almost like cathartic for me.
And it wasn't still an established organization? That
wasn't established yet. We didn't become an established organization until 2020. Before 2020, we were fiscally sponsored.
And let's go back. Trayvon Martin started, that was in 2012, 13.
Yes, exactly.
So that's 7 years of just grassroots. Everybody's bought into the movement, not formalized as an institution.
It's not formalized as an institution. At that point, we're calling ourselves a decentralized network, which we are. And many of us are traveling around the world, kind of like preaching the BLM story. Like, you could do BLM in your country too. Like, you know, and I remember going to the UK in 2015, and all the, you know, Black Brits being like, how do you do this? Like, and then I remember, you know, we were really explicit. I was really explicit. I was like, we shut shit down. Like, that's what we're doing. And we staged our first action in the UK, and I just remember I could still hear it, all of them being like, Black Lives Matter. It was like, that's when I started to be like, oh, I think, like, this is gonna be global. Like, I think we're gonna do this
because
thing.
I also think Black people in America don't realize Black people in, you know, Libya are still fighting slavery. You know, like, there's Black people all over the world who are in some way or another feeling like their Black life doesn't matter. So I think the connectivity between the simple hashtag was something that resonated, regardless if it was a Mike Brown or Tamir Rice or a Trayvon Martin, but it was also like the Libyan slave trade, you know, how Black people in other countries were not being able to show up. Okay, so 2015, you're putting in structure, you're getting chapters, you're saying, okay, we need to figure out how to get a bank account from this business, because now it's growing, it's massive at this point. I remember watching Black Lives Matter LA, Black Lives Matter California, Black Lives Matter New York. Then it just started growing everywhere. Then you see overseas. And it really became this huge, massive thing. You decided to form the company, to form it as a company. Now, when did you all start talking about, okay, now how do we raise money, or how do we accept money? And what is that conversation experience like?
Such a good conversation. It's tricky because we didn't start the organization just yet. We went to a fiscal sponsor. So a lot of grassroots organizations they don't have the infrastructure to start their own nonprofit. So they go to a bigger nonprofit, or they go to a place where they help incubate nonprofits. So we went to a fiscal sponsor at the time because one of our first donors was Prince.
Really?
Yes. Prince was the first real celebrity to be like, we want to give you money, and we didn't we didn't have a place to put it. So we went to a fiscal sponsor and they were like, absolutely. I think it was like $10,000 that he donated. But it's Prince.
Right.
It was such a big deal. And then from Prince, it became Beyonce and Baygood. And they gave us $250,000. So now we're like, okay, what do we do with this? And, you know, we want to build a board because that's one of the first things you do. And we start figuring out how do we build a board. And I'm gonna just be honest, at this point, it's a lot going on internally because it's not all like, you know, roses and peaches. Like folks are starting to be like, wait a second, why y'all now the ones in front? Like, wait, we got this money, why can't we use it for this?
But do you think, who was saying that? Was it the organizers? Was it just chapters?
It was chapters, it was organizers.
And this was whispers?
It's whispers and also explicit.
Okay.
Like, and these are not bad questions, right? Like, we did not start this movement to then start a nonprofit organization. In fact, the three of us were really like, do we really? We all are literally running our own nonprofits right now. Like, does it make sense to this? But like, why would we turn down money? You know, there's this important opportunity. People are saying, like, you know, you all have been in this work for a decade now. This is a good opportunity. So I think there was a lot of messages, a lot of us being pulled, and folks on the ground were like, you know, we need this money too. So what we did with the money is we dispersed it amongst the chapters, which meant it was very, you know, it's like what, $10K barely to go to. And so that was kind of our first go around with
So let me back up. Okay, so you formed the structure. Now, are the three of you like executive director? What are your titles at that point?
Co-founders still.
So just co-founders.
I know, which is so tricky.
And so do you think the disconnection between the people who became a part of the movement and this grassroots and they own it, and you're preaching ownership and local ownership, right? So it's like your state has a governor, but there's a president and there's a Congress. Do you think because they built it locally and they felt that ownership that you empowered them to feel, it became a why are we thing because you didn't have that overhead infrastructure of president, vice president?
You're probably the first interviewer that understood that just like that. Yes, like I think that.
Well, because you can't build a movement of the people and not own the leadership.
Yes.
But you also don't want to own the leadership because you don't want them to think I'm your leader.
That's exactly right.
Right.
It was there's so many things that I look back at that if I knew better or would I do differently, I don't know. I don't know what was the right decision. Was it the right decision for us not to be executive directors? Was it the right? I don't know. All I know is that we were doing the best we could at the time. And so we start thinking about, okay, now we have to fundraise because we got these chapters and people want support and at the time a lot of people were fundraising off of the back of Black Lives Matter. They were, there was a big initiative from many huge foundations that were like the Black Lives Matter Fund, which confused people because if the fund is called Black Lives Matter, but this new organization also called Black Lives Matter. Why didn't you all get money from that? We didn't. There were so many in the early stages of BLM.
And you all didn't have a legal team to start going after people. Did you trademark it? You trademarked it.
We did not.
Patrisse, y'all didn't trademark Black Lives Matter?
No, we
So
did
you
not.
built a movement for 3 years that's global, fire.
Yes.
I mean, I built the show Gagging with Jason Lee and we got the trademarks right then. So you built this global movement. Why not? Was it because you didn't want to feel like you were taking advantage?
Yes.
See, that guilt shit is what I feel like holds us all back.
I know.
Okay.
I know. So
I'm going to say this again.
Yes.
You did not trademark
no.
and protect the brand that you created. Okay.
No, because I'm not thinking about it
As a brand at first.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And once we start to go to lawyers,
That's why all these people, all of y'all at the rallies side of the street with Black Lives Matter
that's
merch.
why they could do it. Yes.
You were selling it.
Yes.
But where was the money going?
That's right. Not to us.
Crazy.
Yes. So we
I'm
did
angry
not.
for you.
So we didn't trademark it, and one of our good folks, man, hit us up, me and Elisa, and was like, "You all need to consider trademarking it," and we did not listen. And I kicked myself for that. But there's so many lessons here,
Yeah. So okay, now you're starting to bring in money. Beyonce, Jay-Z are pulling up. Prince is publicly supporting it. Now celebrities see that it's the popular thing to do. Not that they didn't believe in it, but now it's like I got to ride this wave.
That's right.
And now it just explodes.
Yes, we're still not getting a ton of money though for a global network. So I think at the height,
Nobody was giving you millions at that point?
no,
Really?
no, we weren't getting millions.
Did you guys have a network of like emails and outreach, like you could reach all the people?
Yeah, and it's funny because most of our donors before 2020, and even while I was there from 2020 to 2021, were individual donors. So the way folks who are running for Congress or president, usually get small dollar donors and they're able to raise millions of dollars. That's really what was BLM's model, not on purpose. It was just how people gave to us. And so we are fiscally sponsored and we're getting small dollars. And I think at the height before 2020, it was anywhere between $1 to $3 million. Still not enough money.
For a year?
Yes, $1 to $3 million is what we were receiving. We got some foundations, some foundation support, but we're still controversial. We're doing direct actions, we're hitting the streets. Like, although it's popular at this point, it's still, as you know, as a former union organizer, there's ways you organize.
Yeah.
And we were challenging all of that.
Well, I'm sure on the outside, people didn't understand what does this turn into. You're
That's
becoming a political problem.
Yes.
Do you have a C4? If they got a C3, C4, oh, they over there raising money. Oh, they're going to be a PAC. Oh, they're going to endorse a candidate. Like,
Yes.
it becomes, I think people that don't understand the infrastructure of how organizations or organizers work in these different movements don't understand, like, you become a threat when people know you got the people.
That's
Because when you got the
exactly right.
people, you got voters.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, 2015 to 2020 is really a time of a lot of things for me personally. I got pregnant and had a kid. I'm still flying all over the country. 2016 is Philando Castile and Elton Sterling. I got invited to go to Obama's town hall, where Erica Garner was, may she rest in peace. And many of the families who were impacted by police violence, it was a shit show, honestly. It was kind of like window dressing, and there was so much at that point. If you can imagine, people had been in the streets for years at this point, and people are tired and they're exhausted, and there isn't a whole lot of money coming in. And then, it's an election season, and we are challenging the Democratic Party. People are pissed at us about it. Obviously we're challenging the Republican Party, but we're also like, y'all are not gonna just come up in here as a Democratic Party and get us to vote for you if you don't have a Black agenda. And there was a lot of work that we did in 2016 to challenge the Democratic Party specifically around what a Black agenda would be. And then obviously Trump gets elected. And that does change. It changes the nature of our organizing, because now we have an actual fascist in office and we start to witness the rise of, right wing, and the rise of the right wing, both on the ground but also in media. And I don't think I or any of us were prepared.
I think back in the 60s, and I know Angela Davis was somebody that you put us on email and was going to participate today, and she's not here, but and we love what she's gone through. If you look at her story and you look at what you're going through, it's very similar in the sense of, back in the day where you had modern day lynching, now mainstream does their lynching, right? The mainstream media. And so when I saw all this stuff in the headlines with you, I was like, yo, I gotta talk to her, because I feel like I've always said on my show, the hashtag protect Black women is not a real thing. I mean, I think the intention of wanting to protect the Black woman, and Black women are the most, targeted or disrespected people on the planet. Why do you think it was so easy to start the lynching we're getting ready to get into on you around you not taking the oath of poverty and living as a successful Black woman?
Yeah. I think there's a number of reasons. One, there's been so much happening inside of the movement. There's so much criticism inside of the movement. Some of that is valid criticism. I'm a big fan of generative critique. I think, the only way we do better is by hearing from people what they feel like or have seen that could be better. So I think there's been a real breakdown internally inside of our movement, and there's things that I have been accountable for over this last year, and I will continue to be. But in true right-wing fashion, they took those critiques and then they used them again. They weaponized it against me and against our movement.
So what were the critiques?
The first critique was that I bought a house. And I was so shocked, Jason, that was like a thing. I was like, I bought a house in Los Angeles and it was $1.4 million, and that's actually like a steal in Los Angeles. But that was like created, you know, that sort of.
Was there undercurrent of optics that you were maybe doing something wrong with the finances?
No, that wouldn't happen till later.
Okay.
The first sort of undercurrent was, you all have all this money, and this really was coming from certain folks, you know, you all have all this money, it needs to go to certain people.
Was this coming within the movement?
Yes.
Okay.
Not necessarily people that I knew. Some folks I did know, but not necessarily people who were like the organizers, but more like everyday Black people being like, wait a second, you all got all this money? Like, where's it going? Like, where? And so that was kind of the first kind of conversation. And, you know, it's hard to keep up with social media. So what people don't know is that we've had tons of conversations with people. We've sat with lots of families. We've sat with lots of organizations. We've done our due diligence. And in fact, we're always, you know, the commitment once that money came in was always to re-grant a lot of it. And to hold on to a lot of it too, so that finally the global movement that we had created in the global network can be resourced. But I think part of the issue, I'll just say for me, is I wish that I would have had more conversations on the front end. I assumed people knew me well enough that they would trust me. I was like, this is what I do. Like,
well, let me ask you, how did people find out you bought a $1.4 million house? Did you tell people that?
No, Dirt did.
Okay, so Black people own Dirt, of course, right?
Dirt's
not owned by Black people.
No.
Okay, so
exactly.
I just want to.
Let's be real clear.
Okay, so now there's your success, your profile, and we're now from 2013 all the way to 2020, 21. Yeah. And then you buy something else. You actually want investment property, or what is this?
No, so I'll give you the lowdown. My first property I ever bought was in 2016. And I bought it because I was gonna rent something.
Okay.
I just had my kid. I was renting like a 2-bedroom apartment, and I called a Black realtor and I said, hey, I'm looking to rent, you know, in South Central, 3-bedroom. And she was like, how much can you pay? And I told her, and she's like, why would you rent? Just buy. I didn't know I could buy. I had no idea. And she was like, so, honey, just come into my office. Let's like figure this out. So I bought my first property in 2016. And I was like, oh, it was just like a bit of paperwork. And I think I put like 5% down. And
that was the $500,000 house?
Yeah, exactly, in Inglewood. Then from there, I bought my second property, which was for my mom.
And that was in Atlanta?
Nope, same.
Here?
Yeah, like just a couple blocks down the street.
Okay.
Then I bought a property in Atlanta.
Which was for $400,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, about 400,000, exactly. So at this point, I'm like, I have money, best way to invest is real estate. And I like work with Black realtors and like Black investors. And when I first started making money in 2016, when I got my first book deal, the first thing I did was like, I've never had money before, so let me hire a financial advisor. And I hired a financial advisor, and financial advisor was like, listen, let's figure out, you know, what are your goals and things like that. And so I start talking about, I think it was 2015 I hired my first financial advisor. And I was like, oh, I want to buy a house one day, and I don't know when I could do that. Maybe that's a 3-5 year goal. But I start to, and I start to be responsible with my money. And I also not only take care of my small family, but I take care of like a lot of my family, because that's what most Black people do when you're raised poor and you get money, you take care of people. So I bought the Atlanta house, and then at this point, the last home I bought was like, this is the home I want. Like, you know, I bought the home in 2016 because it was like, all right, this is like affordable and this is what I could do.
Was that your first time owning a house?
Yeah, in 2016. It was my first time being a homeowner. And then, you know, my mom was living in Vegas, and I had a kid, and I really wanted her to be close to our family, and so I bought her house, and it was a surprise, and it was like a duplex on 74th and Normandy, you know, like it's her first time also being a homeowner. So these were all very exciting moments.
And things to be proud of.
Things to be proud of. And we ended up selling the Georgia house because where it was at was Trump country, and they doxed it. So as in, you know, right-wing media put it everywhere. So it didn't make sense to keep that house. And then it was this last house that I live in. I'm like, I don't want to say it out loud, but everybody knows my address because.
Well, don't say the address, but how much did that house cost?
That's 1.4.
Okay.
So that was the last
and
house.
still, even after, I live in a $4 million house. I'm getting ready to get bulletproof windows. My dog's got a play area, and I mean, and I know because my business is for profit,
Right.
I can go and put the jewelry, I got a watch on, I smell good, I can do all that because I'm a for-profit business.
Yeah.
I'm not expected to take an oath of poverty.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say, you buy a $1.4 million house, that $1.4 million to people who are working a 9 to 5, they hear that money, but you don't pay you didn't pay cash?
No.
So you got to finance. And I'm going to ask you a personal question. How much did you put down for that house?
20%.
Okay. So 20% is 280. But by then you've been teaching in colleges. You have a book by then?
I have 2 books.
2 books by then that were
One is a bestseller.
which means it's so best. Which means it's so better.
I also have a Warner Brothers deal.
It's so better than a lot of other books. Okay, and then you get a deal with Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
So was there a disconnect between you being a leader of a movement that was ignited by the pain of watching black people be killed unjustly, and you being a black woman who has a family to take care of and an obligation as a black woman to become successful and be an image to other black women who believe it's not possible? Do you think there was a disconnect between people with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know that was a disconnect.
Well, you didn't know that. You didn't know trademark. Who the hell was around you? You should have called me.
I didn't realize that that's how people respond to me.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking I'm Patrisse from the 818 that people know. Like, I've been doing this work forever. Like, I didn't think it would be an actual upset that I bought a house. I did not think that. If I thought that, things would have been, you know, I would have done things differently. There's whole YouTube videos of like, Patrisse Cullors got it wrong. This is what she should have done, literally. Like, of it, like investors who invest in stuff, like she should have done this and that. I wasn't thinking like that.
You didn't have an advisor?
No. You know, I think the other thing is that I have had to, you know, one of my good friends said to me, she's like, I know you think you're still a grassroots organizer. You're not. You're different now. That doesn't mean you're not a part of the movement. That doesn't mean that you don't love black people. Like, but your relationship to who you used to be, that's an old person. Like, and I think I've had to really come to terms with that in this last year and a half. I also think black people who fight on behalf of black people should get paid. I don't think we should take an oath of poverty. I think that is a really slippery slope. And I think it really impacts people's ability to be fulfilled black people. I have met so many brilliant black organizers, comm strategists, so many brilliant black people inside of our movement who deserve to get paid, who deserve to not have to work 5 different jobs because they want to still be a part of the movement. They deserve to get an income. And I really want to make sure I make that very, very clear. And I hope that in this whole situation, you know, one of the lessons that we do learn is that we don't expect black people who are sacrificing their lives to not be able to take care of themselves and their families. Because we have already seen that a generation ago. If you look at what happened with Malcolm, if you look at what happened with MLK, like so many of our leaders who did sacrifice for us did not leave, weren't able to leave their children anything. And that was something, you know,
Well, and they left their children because they became such a threat, they were killed.
That's exactly right.
And people have threatened to kill you.
Multiple times. I was doxxed, you know, I've been doxxed so many times, but in 2021, when right-wing media specifically went after me, they doxxed me.
And that's where they release your information?
They released my information, and that was, I have a 6-year-old, you know, that's really, it was beyond scary. It was like, I felt like, and many people were calling me, they're like, you know, I had someone who come up to me the other day and they're like, I had never met them, and they're like, sis, I just want to say I'm really glad you're alive, because what happened this last year scared the shit out of me. I thought, we have a collective memory of what happens to our leaders. They don't survive. There's only a few leaders.
But your problem is you had imposter syndrome and didn't realize you had become one.
That's exactly.
And you just walking around in pavilions looking for mushrooms that Rico don't want to eat, not knowing, right?
That's yes.
And not wanting to accept.
I think so. Not wanting to accept, and also just wanting to still be able to do things that I'm not able to do in the same ways anymore.
But $415,000 and $500,000 and 1.4 million is not a lot of money.
It's not.
Especially living in LA.
It's not, but the way that the right-wing media painted it and the way that we picked it up was, they said, Black Lives Matter co-founder goes on house shopping spree, and her portfolio is $3.2 million. So they know what they're doing, and they know what's going to ignite people.
So I get that, and because I'm in it, I understand how they do it. But why did Black people buy into it? And why do you think why did Black people buy into it? And second question is, do you think the Black Lives Matter movement failed in protecting you?
I think Black people bought into it because the right-wing messaging went viral. And, folks like the Shade Room picked it up, and then that's like a lot of people didn't know about it until the Shade Room picked it up the first time. And, I've had
a lot of our people didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I've had my conversations with folks at the Shade Room about that. And I think, and then they did a whole retraction, and they came through for the situation, once they heard more about it. And I think at the end of the day, the virality of social media is hard to contain. And once a certain message has gone out there, because it could have been a totally different messaging, which is like, BLM co-founder invests in homes that supports her family, and that's what Black people do. And Black people would have seen it differently, but the fact that the first messaging was, she has all these homes and she went on a shopping spree. I mean, at the height of it, Jason, the New York Post had me on the cover. I remember waking up, the dirt thing came out, maybe it was a Thursday. Then that next day, it was kind of quiet, but then by Saturday, I was on the cover of the New York Post. Physical copies. And I was like, how did they do that? What is going on? What's happening? And that's when I started to realize oh, I'm a target now. They are actually, what people don't know is these groups have think tanks. They start to message, they start to see okay, who's the most popular person? Who's the easiest, who's the most vulnerable? I was the most vulnerable. There were so many gaps in my, and just things I'm not operating like I'm a celebrity. I'm operating like I'm a community organizer. So I'm not thinking about certain things that need to be protected. And so that, and I think, the question around did the Black Lives Matter movement fail to protect me? I don't know. I don't want to place blame. I think that's too harsh. I just don't think we know how to protect each other. I don't think we have enough wherewithal and infrastructure to differentiate what is generative critique and how we hold someone accountable without throwing them under the bus, or without them, in my situation, not being able to get the protection that I needed. There's a lot of things I wish happened.
But how do we say you created the Black Lives Matter movement, and then when mainstream goes on a lynching campaign, the Black Lives Matter don't show up to say that your Black Lives Matters, and you not be angry?
Melina Abdullah has been the biggest supporter of me. She has shown up from the beginning. And so there have been individual people who have been very present and very protective of me. But our movement infrastructure does not have the capacity to protect Black women right now. We just don't. It's not a judgment. My hope, like I said earlier about, this moment, my hope is that this is a learning moment. My hope is that this won't happen again, and we will protect each other.
So what we're here talking about is, I want to just cap this real quick. You started a movement for the people because you believed in it and you believed it was important. It became successful. You became successful. We're talking about a $1.4 million house. I thought there was like a $10 million house. Like you went into the fund and just like put a miscellaneous budget aside for real estate. So we're talking about a $1.4 million house. Okay. Let me ask you just some questions. Have you ever stolen from the Black Lives Matter fund movement?
No.
Have you ever asked for $10 million? Okay, so they raised $90 million. Jesus. Who is over there? Okay. They raised $90 million. In February 2021, they had taken $90 million. You didn't even get 10% of that as a...
No, because you can't do that. No, you can't take 10%.
Okay. Did you take 5% of that?
No.
Okay. So when you're raising $90 million, you don't believe that as the leader of the organization, you deserve to have a salary.
Yes, I should have had a salary.
So you still didn't have a salary then?
No.
So how are you expected to pay for security for...
So the BLM paid for security.
Okay.
Yes, they handled security, they handled flights.
And you didn't feel that the organization, you never felt, even in the midst of having all these feelings of being killed or something happened to your family, that you could go and press them to give you the resources in the salary or form or whatever to make sure that you were protected?
I didn't want to take a salary because the very thing that has happened to me, I didn't want to happen, but I wish I took a salary because I think it confuses people. They're like, wait, you're doing all this work and this is the thing you're most visible for and you're not getting paid through the organization. Like everyone who I've talked to has been like, well, then how did you get paid? And I'm like, you guys, like, look at my resume. These are all the ways, these are all the other ways. But I would do a lot of things different. Like I would never, this is like, is this a camera that I can look into?
Yes.
If you ever start an organization and you make a lot of money, please take a salary. Like, don't follow this. I don't think this was like good
It's
advice.
a job.
It's a job.
I mean, it's a movement.
And you're allowed to get paid for the job that you do. And you should. And black people should specifically.
White people do it.
All the time.
But why do we feel guilted into not doing it?
Because we have a very complicated relationship to money. We do. And resources and the economy, like black people have a very complicated relationship to it. And that became really obvious with the attacks around, you know, my house and my homes. I was like, oh, this is not about me. These are deeper issues. Mm-hmm. And
so you took the oath of poverty.
I took the oath of poverty when it came to the movement.
Yeah, but even I mean, I'm not even sitting here suggesting you should have become rich from the movement.
No, of course.
I'm saying that you deserved to be paid to lead an organization.
I agree with you.
Okay, so
now.
Then you decide I'm walking away and you left it.
I did.
So are you involved at all?
No, I mean, from 2021, May.
It's 1 year, it's the anniversary.
Yeah, I left and I'm not involved at all. I mean, the BLM 990s are going to be coming out in about a week and a half, and so I'm on the 990, so I'm talking to the team about it, but I'm not involved in the decision making. I'm not involved in the day to day.
And you don't miss it? Do you miss it?
No, I don't miss it.
Are you proud of what you created?
Yes, I'm very proud. Mm-hmm. I'm very, very proud. And I also, as someone who started several organizations, you know, both for-profit and nonprofit, I don't believe that the work, especially inside the movement space, should be led by one person forever. I think there should be leadership changes, just like there is around presidents of a country. And something as big as BLM, it's important that leadership shifts. You know, I really am proud of the work that BLM Grassroots is doing with Melina Abdullah and the team that's on the ground. And I think that that kind of work is really necessary. But I'm also more than an activist. I'm an artist, you know, I'm an educator, I'm an author. And that kind of work, being inside of BLM the way that I was, it's all consuming. And it's hard to be able to do other things that I want to be doing with my life.
But when you started as an organization in 2000, was it 20 or 15?
We became a formal nonprofit, like where the money went into the nonprofit's bank account in 2020.
But do you at least still own it?
No. With
so you took your name off all the paperwork?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so disappointed. That's the only criticism I have of you.
Tell me why. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Because it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like this is like I worked at a union for 11 years, and I mean, like I got up every morning 6 a.m. and went to bed, falling asleep doing work, fighting on arbitration panels, organizing, leading bargaining tables, creating coalitions, like messaging, flyers, carrying flyers, delivering flyers, phone calls, all hours of the night, holidays. Nobody cares about you as a person at that point. And I was just an organizer. I wasn't the leader of it.
Yeah.
To then not reap the benefit, because there should be a benefit of doing that type of work, that selfless work and that thankless work, and then succumbing to the pressure of it and then just walking away. There's a documentary here and you should profit from that. I would be putting together a documentary on it because I'm sitting here not just interviewing you as a black person who bought into the movement, believe in the movement, still believe in the movement, and believe in you. I'm sitting here as a person who just started a nonprofit, who's getting ready to go through it, who's going to raise a lot of money, and I'm going to make sure, I mean, I'm not going to take a salary from that because I'm putting a person in place, but there's work that organization is going to do that Hollywood Unlocked is going to be a part of, so there's going to have to be some support for the company.
Here's the thing though, BLM, I hear you, I think that's like an important criticism, and it's not like it's something that I didn't sit with over and over again, like should I really do this? But I think where BLM was at when I left, I was not in a place I was not fit mentally and emotionally to lead. And I think we've seen leaders stay in a place because they feel obligated to it and they're not fit to lead, and grave decisions get made. I was not well mentally. I was in a very, 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 very bad place. And I think that it was a responsible decision to step away. Question could have been like, well, you could have took a sabbatical and came back.
Gone to the board.
You know, but there was no board yet.
Oh, so there was nowhere else to go?
No. So when we finally started in 2020, just, you know, it's important for the record, I was the single board member, and we were building everything out. We were like, okay, we had our strategy plan, we had all these things in place, and then the attacks came. My biggest criticism for us, and me included, is like, we should have known we were going to be attacked.
Yeah.
Like.
But when you're new and you're building something, like you don't know, I didn't know building Hollywood Unlocked, all the pitfalls out, you know, that's why I'm coming out with courses.
Of course.
To show people, you know.
But I think not knowing we were going to be attacked at the rate we were attacked, you know, I was at a cyber, I'm doing a lot of digital civil rights stuff now because of everything that happened to me. And Meghan Markle was at the event with me, and she was talking about how, like, she didn't know that she was going to be, you know, at the center of attacks. And I think something like at the height of her being attacked, the Daily Mail was doing 30 articles a day on her, which is like more hours in a day, she said. Like, I didn't know that the New York Post, because they're like the primary attackers of me, that they would be putting out multiple articles a day and then every single day and saturating the media with that message. And I wish we would have known, because we could have put more in place, because then maybe I would have stayed. But there wasn't enough in place to make sure that my mental health and my physical safety, like, could withstand what happened.
Is there a board there now?
Yeah, there is.
But you wouldn't go back if they invited you?
No. No.
So have you reconciled with everything that's happened? And, you know, I know you're an author, so for lack of better words, closed the book. Is that book closed, the Black Lives Matter book?
Yes and no. I think it will be really closed, like at the end of this year. Like, I think that chapter will be really closed. And I am thinking about doing a documentary.
Yeah, no, you should do. I'm going to do a documentary, and I'm not going to donate the proceeds of that documentary, because that life was mine. Like, this experience is yours. The movement is ours, but the life that you were living, leading it, was yours. And you deserve, you deserve to benefit from that. Well, listen, this has been amazing. I enjoyed it. I don't even know how much time we took, but I think we took enough time to talk about it all. So let's stay in touch, and when you, I want to do more.
Good.
You know, and then when you do the book, How the Black Lives Matter movement failed me or the documentary, I want to be there hosting the premiere party.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay. Peace.